Good evening. Um, Welcome to my latest installment. Today I'm going to be quick, which usually means I take forever. Um, but I was looking back at some of the old material, and I went through every possible iteration of possibilities. Um, I was looking back at this one here. I'll just share it quickly. And hang on. I'll resist allow. I'm getting there. Hang on. Technical difficulties. We'll just put it down to technical difficulties. Hang on. Share region. Yeah, that'll do. I'm going to share this region from about here to about here, and then that should be fine. So, what do we got here? What was that? All right. Yeah, this little number here we were basically looking at, because I recall reading where was it? This amazing book from the was it early 90s when she released that? Let me just find out. That's right, here we are. Electric Angel, Radiohead Protocol, 26. No, it was definitely wasn't the 90s. That was that's because she actually did release something at 2010. That was the first two sections or something, and then she released the third one around 2016. Um, but yeah, she was suggesting still there was something with implanting and stuff in the nerve along the nasal passage in order to enable what we're dealing with. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, is actually V2K. And it's funny, out of all of the attacks, except maybe tinnitus, yeah, V2K is probably one of the ones that I've had most luck in at least reducing to a point that makes it negligible. And certainly after treatments that I've been using for nearly a year. I've been using them for nearly a year. And I can safely say that for me, that these have been effective. Now, back here, I used to talk about strands, and I'll just read you this little thing. I want to be very clear that everything I published back then was based on isn't what was happening. So I was wrong. Let's say that. So I'll just read this here. It says, this video shows metal doped carbon microstrands I pulled off my bedding using a neodymium magnet. And I did do that. I did pull these things that are in this video off my bedding. And I even showed that in a video. The thing about it is that they aren't metal doped carbon microstrands. They are microstrands, and they may have metal in them, namely iron, and they may not be carbon at all. I don't think they are carbon. They are more likely made out of the same elements as our hair and our nails. That is keratin and collagen, with iron, with a high iron content. And that's what makes them black, the iron. And it is also what makes them, probably in this form, what you call something like paramagnetic, where they can be picked up with a magnet in the right conditions, which I actually showed in a previous video. And so here I was thinking that these were being sprayed on us, these metal doped carbon microstrands, and that they were enabling what I say in here is the theory was that they were going up into the nasal passage, and that was enabling them to vibrate them and cause hearing sensation. So they go into your ears, they go into your nose. But, I always wondered, how did they make them go into the ears? Like, a piece of dust falling or floating in the air, it's not going to go into your ears. You're like, it's probably going to land around the outsides maybe, and maybe when you're sleeping you might get a little bit in there, but you're not going to get enough every day. And I go to sleep and wake up and it was back again. How's it getting in there? I used to ask. And I was like, well, they must have a way to attract it, and that's why I was going down the next path. Electrostatic deposition. They charge up the body, and then I was like, maybe the EMF charges the body and then it attracts. So elaborate. And that's bollocks as well. Like, maybe there's something to that because they use electrostatic techniques like ionic charging in the atmosphere, for example, to make clouds form and to make them disperse. They can use ionic charge, which you can use EMF to fire into the sky, like or use ionic heaters, like HARP arrays and stuff like that, can actually do stuff like this. But you can do it just with probably special towers, or who knows, you can probably make a phased array do the same thing in a smaller context. But I imagine these are more large scale things for controlling weather and stuff. Anyway, I digress. V2K. The bad news was I was wrong here. The good news is that the concept still applies. And just think, I was pulling all this stuff out of my bedding and it was all growing out of my skin. And I've recently spoken about this and I've said it was bacterial. I have since, it doesn't take me long to change my mind, and I'm happy to be here to tell you that I was wrong. Now, I'm not saying I was wrong about the bacterial thing, but I think I was. Skate, let me just fix that. I do indeed believe that what is causing these fibers to grow inside or out of my body, it looks like what people describe as Morgellons. But people aren't really 100% sure about what Morgellons is. And some say that it's bacterial. Some say that it produces fibers of certain makeup, including keratin and collagen. But others have found that it includes non-human proteins in these strands. And so there's been a metagenomics thing done recently. I think it was the most recent one, and it came back with insect proteins. And so that's unusual. So there's a lot of different variants, and there seems to be, like, every time they test them, someone's getting something different. And on top of that, there is no money going into this. They don't want to investigate it, and that's telling in itself, isn't it? So the obvious thing that no one's saying is that the most likely explanation, when you look at everything that's happened, is that our cells have been hacked in order to produce proteins they normally wouldn't. Now, what do I base this on? Well, how about a big fuckload of money being poured into Big Pharma to produce mRNA vaccines, for example? So let's think about what mRNA vaccines actually did. They basically, the messenger RNA, they modified the RNA instruction. What is that? Well, cells have this little instruction set inside them that tells them how they replicate. Because cells replicate. That's what they do. That's how they produce. So stem cells are nascent, and you can actually change them and stuff and make them turn into whatever you like. And that's what mRNA is about taking those cells and making them do something they normally wouldn't. Which is why I always like to say this sounds like an analogy for mind control as well, doesn't it? You take a cell or a way to infiltrate a government, for example. You invade, you penetrate the cabinets, you invade, you know, and then you make it do something that you want it to do. And it might even be something that makes it work against itself. So what am I saying here? What I'm saying here is that a genetic modification, even temporary or one at an RNA level, could be responsible for the production of the fibers that I'm getting all over my body. Now, that's been happening for years. I didn't have the jab, so I got exposed to it some other way. I'm not sure what that way was, but it's not like because that's the thing with mRNA and the jabs. The reason why they gave it like that is because they wanted control over your entire body, is what I imagine. And they lied and they said it only stays in the arm, and it didn't. It went to the brain, and it went to your nads, and it went to your feet, and it went to your toes. But mostly it sat in and went into your reproductive organs. And this is where I think, most heavily found that these cell invaders, the lipid nanoparticles, went into the soft tissues, the brain, the reproductive organs, the liver, the kidneys, these sort of areas. But it goes throughout the entire body. And so I had to posit that maybe all this investigation under the bacterial thing, and I've even offered people solutions under this, guys. I was saying, could I have a bacterial infection that's producing this? And some suggest that's what Morgellons people are experiencing. Now, and they say it's a similar one, or the same as the one that's often associated with Lyme's disease, or Lyme disease, which is a tick-borne virus. So the problem there is that saying that all Morgellons people have been bitten by a tick? And if so, like, how come I don't recall being bitten by a tick? And therefore, where would I have gotten exposed to the same thing? They could have weaponized bacteria, and maybe they have. Maybe it is what I've got. But I've tried many things, and I've had multiple courses of antibiotics in the time that I've actually been targeted. I think I've at least had one. And they didn't reduce my symptoms from what I recall. And my natural course that I was trying to take, the one that I've publicized here, it hasn't really I've had to wait until I've gone through most of the course, and I've found no reduction. I've no real evidence that it is actually doing what I thought it would do. And so I was only 4 weeks in when I published that article. And since then, I have not found any noticeable difference. And based on what I know about that particular bacteria, you would expect at least some form of difference in your condition to have occurred by now, which it hasn't. And so I'm saying perhaps I was wrong on this one. And because I'm saying that, I want to make sure that anyone, I do say in the article, mind you, that it is only really, you want to confirm that this is what you actually have before you go taking it. And so I do say that in there. And yeah, I stand by that. And so where to from here? So the cells have been hacked. And this is what I'm writing about now. And this fits in with the transhuman agenda. When you think about it, what is it to be transhuman? Well, they're trying to change our genetics. They're changing the way our cells express. They're changing the way we interface also with technology. And part of that interfacing with technology for a targeted individual, especially, is being harassable, is having someone else's voices in your head, is being able to be burnt and poked and prodded as though you are their property. And so where do we go from here? Well, let me think about this. Let me go down this path. So imagine, right, that the majority of the technology that what we deal with is actually not sitting in the body at all. Imagine most of the technology, and I'm talking in the tune of around $7 trillion of expenditure, rolling out telecommunications towers and satellite systems throughout the world over the last 20 odd years. It's a lot of money, $7 trillion. The IEEE, most of its information sitting behind a paywall that you cannot look at, but it'd be great if you had access to it. You'd probably find that the technologies and the protocols that they list in their little documents allow full, well, where we're going is millimeter precision targeting to your body, to your anywhere on your body, and millimeter precision targeting while you're moving, while you're whatever you're doing. Doesn't really matter. The beams on 6G are so tight that they will be. It's like capable of surgery of a human from a distance. This is what we're talking about. The accuracy is also there. They can follow you. They can track you at 100 kilometers an hour. They can do all that wonderful stuff. And, this is what I'm experiencing, not necessarily 6G, but I'm experiencing beamforming technology that is allowing them to do what they're doing. So call it a direct energy weapon, whatever. It's energy directly delivered in a beam to whatever location on the body, on the person. Now, so why was I talking about the V2K? V2K, the fibers growing out of the skin. Now, I can't see them, by the way. I can't see these fibers, but if I wipe my ears like I did today, and I shower every day, I'm very thorough on showering. But if I wiped what did I do earlier? Yeah, just around the skin anywhere. This is what I'm finding. So this is probably like 5 to 6, even that'd be a centimeter long, that thing. But you can't see that. Like I look at my skin, it looks just normal. There's nothing there. And then look at this. Let me just put this here. So this is all coming out of my skin. The dark patches are actually from a liquid that I was using on the skin before. These weird little bits here, but the black lines, they're all coming out of the skin. Yeah, this, that there down here is a 35 millimeter earphone jack, just for scale. So look how small this thing is. But look how it's all curled up. See, it's grown under the skin, and then I'm rubbing over it has actually made it come out. And it's, so this is tiny. You can't see this without a microscope. Now, they're black. They're all black mostly. I get red ones, very odd red ones, and blue ones sometimes. Mostly black. Mostly black. Everywhere. Look how much. Look how prevalent. That's just rubbing off the skin. That might be just rubbing off a patch like, what, 3 3 inches or something. And my skin, like I said, my skin looks fine, except sometimes I get raised patches when they hit me really hard. You know why? Because this shit's growing under the skin. Because when they hit you, they make it grow, which is also a modification. So they could make it so when you get hit with a certain frequency, it triggers the cells to produce more. I'm not making that up. There's patents out there for this. There's not just patents, there's papers out there for this, where they've actually done tests on mammals to make cells express proteins excessively by applying EMF, pulsed magnetic fields, alternating magnetic fields, alternating electrical fields, and even other methods like heat and various things. So the plan was to actually excite the cells to produce more protein. So not only can they change what protein your cells produce and in what form, they can also make them more virulent. All right. So I now believe I don't have a bacterial infection. What I believe is happening is they have engineered my cells to produce this crap, and they can make it more prevalent whenever they want, and they can stop it whenever they want. But they don't. So it's like remote control cell production. See where I'm going with this? And so that's terrifying. Okay, so what's the relevance of this? Well, I said these fibers. I've tested these fibers. Like I've videoed these fibers moving by themselves. They're not worms. Look closely at this shit. They're ribbons, right? They're made of collagen, a piezoelectric element, which responds to electromagnetic frequencies. They've got iron in them, which makes them couple even greater with the magnetic field. So they've got piezoelectric, that is, they respond to electricity. The electromagnetic fields have electricity in one side, and they are also magnetically affected because, and I've picked them up with a magnet, because they've got iron in them. So they're extremely, they couple extremely well with electromagnetic frequency. If you pulse electromagnetic frequency, it's something that moves from an electromagnetic frequency. You pulse it enough, you're going to get a vibration. If they're sitting in the ear hole because they're growing out of the inside of your ears, then you're going to hear a high-pitched squeal, maybe, or you might even hear voices if they're all up in your nasal cavity and in the ears. And so isn't it funny when I wake up in the middle of the night after my shower, like 3 hours later, that my head's all screaming again with tinnitus. And then if I stay calm and I just take myself to the bathroom and just wipe my face, dry wipe it, just wipe over the face, all over the face like that. And then I do all through the ears the same thing and get my hands in there and do that and brush it off. First thing I notice if I'm being hit is my fingertips start to tingle. That's those piezoelectric strands on the ends of the fingers. So if I rub my hands through my hair like that too, when I'm getting hit hard and feel that, I can feel it all on the ends of my fingers. So if I put that under the microscope, I'll see these fibers all over my finger. The other day I got a burn. Yeah, I got this burning sensation on the end of my finger. This little finger here. Now, excuse my hangnail. I went and looked here. That's my nail. It's like this finger here. It was this one. That's my nail. Very close in. It looks a bit nasty, this part here. But as you can see, when you get close, what was on there? Right where the burn was. So yes, I'm telling you that something that small can cause that sensation. You know how? They make it vibrate about thousands of times in a second, and that will cause heat. All right, if it goes fast enough. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But if that's under the skin and it's vibrating like that, then it's going to hurt. If they do it slowly, it's going to feel like a vibration. If they do it quick, it's going to feel like a burn or a sting. Yeah. So, yeah. And if they do it fast enough, you can get full burns. You know, like you can actually make someone burn from this. It's like a microwave with iron. What happens to iron when you put it in a microwave? Yeah. Cool. Anyway, I'm not going to keep showing you my gross pictures. I just implore anyone again who's targeted to prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Show me, tell me that you've done this test and come back clear. I want you to tell me that I've swabbed my skin, looked at it under at least a 400x microscope, or right, and didn't find anything. Right? See that little guy there? See, he's hiding there. That's my normal hairs. That's what the fibers look like. They're too small to see unless you've got a microscope. And imagine all of those sensations you're feeling on your body are all responsive. These that they wouldn't happen unless you had these on you. So in other words, the same pulsed EMF wouldn't give you a feeling of discomfort without these, and that these are so prevalent throughout your body that you're feeling this. And imagine now the people with the button, the people that is, well, the mRNA kind of implicates the pharmaceutical industry, doesn't it? And those who pander to that crowd. That basically says maybe they've got a switch that can say switch whatever proteins they want on in whatever part of your body they wish to switch them on in. Yeah, as long as they're infected with the Trojan horse mRNA. Because mRNA was made to make the spike protein, right? The mRNA jabs for the vaccines. But they can make any protein. I'm not saying the ones in the jabs were designed to make any protein, or that they had a remote control backdoor into them so that you could just frequency hit them with a frequency and then they'd all of a sudden express a different type of protein. Maybe. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. All I know is that I definitely heard some scientists that got shut up very quickly saying that there was DNA found in some of these samples. And for some reason, they had to be frozen, remember? Negative 70 degrees or something. It's mighty cold. It's probably to preserve that DNA. But imagine having a library of DNA and being able to splice it into the person through a command, an EMF command, for example, just a burst. Now you're producing fibers. Thank you. Thanks for playing. Tomorrow we might just stop them and make you produce something else. Maybe we can, there's a whole list of things you could do. Proteins in the body, as long as they've got the resources to build it, you can trigger the cells to produce whatever you want. What you could do, you can induce histamine responses. You could induce neuro responses, depression. You could induce, you can induce diabetes. You can induce so many ailments. Like this is basically illness on demand, right? That's what we're talking about. Illness on demand. Anyway, and so, when we had good old Klaus Schwab telling us that, if you take the gene therapy, it'll change you. That's what he was talking about. If you take the gene therapy, it'll change you. What he didn't tell you is they possibly have the key to make that change. And they can time it whenever they like. and they can switch it off whenever they like. And then they can induce a spate of various illnesses directed at individuals across any geography they wish, and it'll just look natural. Oh, look, all these guys got heart attacks. Oh, no, they didn't really. They spread them out nice and evenly, so it just looks like natural death or natural illness. Oh, that's just how it was happening, you know. So, anyway, let's talk solutions, shall we? I don't have the solution. If your genetics are being fucked with, then you're going to need some kind of magic genetics dude who knows how to re-encode the affected cells in your body. Yeah, you'll have to talk to the filthy establishment about that. I think the ones that gone all in on mRNA, and they just opened a new mRNA factory down in Melbourne because they plan to keep cranking it out. So we're now one of the big guys producing whatever poison concepts they've got. And so that's a lot of fun, isn't it? What else? I wanted to differentiate, actually. So mRNA it doesn't last very long, and they put in a lipid nanoparticle so they can get in the body. Otherwise, the body was throwing a big spack, going, well, we don't want this shit in the body, because so the body sees it as a threat. Probably rightly so. So it dresses itself in this nice greasy coating, which allows it to slip by unnoticed, and it even goes up through the blood-brain barrier that way, which usually has very, very good bounces at the door that don't let any riffraff, especially not greasy riffraff, in, which is similar to what's happened to our parliaments and what's happened to most of our governments and in the world as well. We've let the greasy messenger RNA in to completely recode the entire entity in a way that we shouldn't have allowed. But okay, so once that's in the body, though, it's going to degrade quite quickly, but it actually enters the cells. You see, this is the great thing. I think the jabs had something like, they had 30 trillion of these lipid nanoparticles in them. Generally, something along those lines, and which is more than the number of cells in the body. Okay, just to give you an idea. So if you had one of these jabs, then there was enough in one to be able to basically enter every cell in the body. I'm not saying that's what would happen. Like, maybe you lose some of it, or you shed some of them, or you wash some of them off, or maybe they just sit in a big ball inside your arm and eventually just slowly soak in. Who knows? But yeah, so that the mRNA, it only lasts a certain amount of time. So it goes into the cell, and then it produces and produces, and then those cells eventually replace. Those cells will die off, right? But I think there were some papers that said that some of these changes could sometimes become permanent, right? The mRNA by itself doesn't last that long. I think the instruction set may reset after a certain time, even inside the cell's life. So it's not meant to be permanent. But during that time, you can make your body produce all these different proteins that could then have long-lasting repercussions, which may be what we saw with COVID, with some people having the heart issues, and the spike protein, they said, maybe blocked up the system in some way, which caused inflammation, or it reacted to this new protein being produced in an area. So the body's reaction, it's like a histamine response, causing inflammation inside the heart and so on. Pericarditis, myocarditis, da 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 da. Right. because your cells are supposed to just produce the proteins that they're supposed to produce. Like the ones here do that, and the ones there do something else. Like you don't want your skin cells doing the same things what your liver cells do, for example. But this is what these Frankenstein um, scientists like to do for some unknown reason, and they call it like this wondrous thing, but it's not really that wondrous. And so, yeah, and so there's differentiation is what I was trying to get at. Is DNA modification is a permanent change to the body. They can do that as well. They can sneak that into your body as well. They can do CRISPR shit in molecules, so that it actually changes your DNA instructions completely, and that will be a permanent change. They can infect you with a bacteria that has a CRISPR system in it, which then will change your DNA. So that's terrifying as well. And they can also produce bioweapons that are targeted specifically at a certain genetics as well. And so there's a lot they can do. There's not much they can't do when it comes to mixing and matching with this technology, which is terrifying. So where do I want to go with this? Yeah, so for me, I don't know whether they can do on demand with me. I don't know whether they're just making me produce these strands on demand, or whether they've just flipped the switch on mine permanently and now I'm going to produce this shit for the rest of my life. Like, is this the mechanism that they're targeting individuals with? Like, that's why I've been trying so hard to get more and more people to test themselves. All you have to do is get a cotton ball, rub it on the skin, and have a look at it under a microscope. That's it. That's the test. If it's got those black strands on it and you can reproduce that again and again, I'm not talking about cotton, I'm talking about shit coming out of your skin, then maybe the whole reason why you can feel crawling, burning, vibrations, and all that shit is because of the targeted weapons, but interacting with the shit in your skin. So I get rid of my B2K by inhaling. I have just some hydrogen peroxide in a bottle. This 2%, maybe 2 or 3%. Snort it, 3 sprays back for 30 seconds, and I hear it crackle, 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 crackle. Then I do the ears. I do the same thing. Just spray that into my ears. 1, 2, 3, and just let it go. Crackle, 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 crackle. Now you can make it even better with your ears, because mine are full on infected. But I used this DMSO. Make sure you've washed and showered and you're nice and clean and somewhere in a clean environment. DMSO on a cotton ball or just on your fingers, and then just rub it over the area of the ear and into the ear a little bit and so on. And then just let that go, let it soak in. And now that's going to open up all the blood vessels. So whatever you put on there is going to go into the skin. And I found that I've been getting build up on both of my ears. They thicken as I get more and more hit. So more and more of these fibers are actually growing under the skin, you see. And that's making my ears completely piezoelectric. Okay. So what I found is after I've done the DMSO, which opens up the blood vessels, I then wait about half an hour, and it's good for about 4 hours afterwards. It's going to take anything that you put into it more. But I usually wait about half an hour or 20 minutes after that's soaked in the DMSO. And just doing that will break down a lot of this buildup. If you've got buildup in this cartilage part of the ear, which is where mine all is, just using DMSO, I reduced the V2K down to a point where I cannot hear it. But by the next day, it's growing back again. All right. And so, but I still only do this every few days, and I basically hardly have to listen to these jerks. So once that's on, I just spray some of that as well, or put it onto a cotton ball and put it on. And I did that, just spray it, and then just hold it. And I can hear all these fibers going. I can hear it right now because I did this just earlier. and it's crackling. Now this thickness in the skin here is going down to a normal side. And I know it's not normal, the thickness it is. It's just that it's got all of these fibers in it. And I know that because that crackling sound is the oxidization of the iron. And yeah, the size of the ear will go down just by doing this, just by holding it. So I'm listening to it now. It sounds like it's raining. Crackle, crackle, crackle. So what's happening in there? Well, I actually brought up, just let me bring up this again. I'll get rid of this now. So this is what's happening. Okay, go in here. See this here? This is in this article. Let me just play it. So what are these? These are the fibers I pulled off out of my bed. They were all coming out of my skin. I thought they were coming from chemtrails. But I put, what did I say? I put about 8 mil of hydrogen peroxide, the same stuff I just sprayed on my ear, in the water, 50 mils of water, with all of these fibers that I picked up with a magnet off my bed out of my sleeping bag, because I was sleeping in there thinking, trying to hide from these chemtrail fallouts, but then realized that it's all coming out of my skin, right? But as you can see, what happens is the oxidization power of hydrogen peroxide, because it's basically water with an extra oxygen molecule that makes it very volatile, and that oxygen tries to attach to something. And so iron, especially anything that's like iron, it'll go straight for it. And what it does is it's blasting all those fibers apart. Now, when I put DMSO in here, the DMSO opens all up the pathways in the ears, and then I put hydrogen peroxide on it. The hydrogen is going in there and reacting with these built up fibers. I can still hear it. I mean, I didn't put any in the ear. This is just on the outside of the ear, and I can hear them from this flap. I can hear it crackling, which is the oxygen basically eating up those fibers. It breaks them up. And if you watch this film, this is 4 minutes, this video, it started off with all these really heaps long fibers, and by the end of it, they're all just broken up. And that's what's happening. And when you do the nasal thing and you do that, that's basically why the H2O2 hydrogen peroxide works. And I still stand by that. Anyway, this has gone for long enough, and I've dribbled a lot of rubbish about stuff. And I think I'm just going to have to wrap it up, I think, because it's way too long. And yeah, let me just go back. So yeah, I hope that helps some people anyway. So, you know, I know the VTK can be a real shit, and yeah, I fortunately have got it to a point where I don't really have to listen to it much. It's quite enough to ignore, and for me, it was one of the main things. And I just hate to think that people are out there dealing with it being real obnoxious and loud when they could just simply do a very simple procedure to remove it. That is, if you confirm you've got black fibers. So the way I'd say this is, don't do it unless you've already confirmed. Find out if you've got the fibers first, right? And if you have the fibers, then this could be playing a massive part in why they're able to address you, because they can just make these fibers vibrate, and vibration equals sound. So that's simple. All right, I'm going to leave it there. All the best, y'all, and I'll chat again soon. Ciao.